Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier classes, we discussed about various aspects related to the material cost, and let us quickly go through the learning outcomes of this chapter. Most of them we have already achieved them. To start with, we understood the meaning, need, and importance of materials, and then we discussed about some of the documents which are involved in the procurement of materials. The material procurement procedure is a very important aspect, theoretically as well as in real life also. The flow of materials is important to note and understand. So those procedures and what kind of documentations are involved in the procuring, storing, and issuing of materials, we have discussed them. And most importantly, we discussed about the various techniques of inventory control. Of course, some of them we are yet to discuss, but most of the crucial inventory control techniques we discussed earlier, along with determination of various stock levels. This is the very key area as far as problems from this chapter are also concerned. And the next very important aspect is definitely determination of EOQ and using the technique of EOQ to identify the best possible order quantity for any organization. We have done many questions related to application of that technique also. And what are the different ways of inventory accounting, and particularly preparation of stock ledger, stores ledger, or an account is another crucial aspect of this chapter. So problems will generally be asked in the valuation of material receipts, that is part of the procurement, different stock levels, that is related to storage and reordering, and the reorder quantity or economic ordering quantity, determination and application of that in the decision making. Also, preparation of stores ledger, which records the receipts, issues, and the balance, both in terms of quantity and value. So these are the crucial aspects of this particular chapter, most of which we already discussed, as well as we have done a reasonable number of problems from each of these topics. Also, we discussed about the treatment of normal and abnormal loss. In general, the normal loss is absorbed by good units. Abnormal loss is charged to costing profit and loss account. That is a generic accounting treatment for any type of normal and abnormal losses. So these are the learning outcomes of this chapter. Again, almost all of them we have reached to achieve, but there are still some small topics which are remaining, which will continue the discussion on those things in the today's session. So this material control, various aspects of material control, this is an important note. All the aspects of material control are involved here, which we discussed earlier. Material procurement procedure is an important aspect also, and different documents involved in that process. Valuation of material receipts, inclusions and exclusions. We have done some questions as well as some of the theoretical questions like storage related things, duties of storekeeper, and what kinds of documents are maintained. Like bin card and stores ledger difference is a very, very important, repeatedly asked theory question. And in the process of understanding the inventory control mechanisms, we discussed some of the techniques. If you just go back, what kind of inventory control mechanisms are there? First one we have discussed, that is quantitative levels, which is the most important one. Physical control you and I cannot do because that has to happen in the real life. So basically the quantitative levels, how to set them, different levels of inventories we discussed. But what we are still to discuss are the other two. What is the classification of inventories on different basis? Also using ratio analysis for inventory control. We will discuss those aspects in today's session. Before that, there is a small topic and a small question also here related to stock out. situation of stock out. So what do you mean by stock out? As the name indicates, it is out of stock. When any inventory item could not be supplied due to insufficient stock in the store, that is called stock out. But point is, once again, if you really employ proper inventory control techniques, then the situation of stock out generally should not arise, because you have the sufficient inventory in the store. You will never be out of stock. That is ideal. But on the other side, if you never wanted to have stock out, you always wanted to be so safer side that you will hold too much of materials, too much of inventories, then naturally because of that there will be heavy carrying costs that will be incurred because of high amounts of storage of materials. So the point is here, part of the inventory control mechanisms is to draw a trade-off. This is a word which is one of the most important things many times we will use in this course. Trade-off means nothing but balancing. So you cannot be having too much of stock, then if you hold that, too much of carrying cost will be incurred because of that. If you carry very less amount of inventories, very small quantities of inventories, problem of stock out might arise. And when there is a stock out, that might cost us also in different ways. For example, if it is a stock out of materials, it will stop the production. So there will be a lot of loss due to production being stopped or halted. Production cannot continue without materials. Labor will be there waiting for materials, but materials are not available because we did not maintain them sufficient stock. So stock out situation can have a problem in production also. Imagine if there is a stock out situation in relation to the final finished goods or stock in trade, which we are supposed to sell. Let us say for traders also, if the final inventories are not available, the finished goods are not available, customers might choose some other product other than ours. So naturally, that can have a lot of impact on the financial terms also. Of course, the non-financial impacts of stock out also will be there, but they are definitely costly. The stock out situations are dangerous. Ideally, this situation should never happen to the organizations. That is how they should maintain their inventory control mechanisms, so that there is no stock out in general. That is the objective, one of the objectives of inventory control systems. So what happens because of stock out? There is a lot of problems, some financial problems, some non-financial also. For example, if there is a stock out situation, usually the reputation of that organization will be definitely going downwards. Suddenly, if there are customers who are ready to buy, but you are not in a position to supply them, then that is a dangerous thing. Customers won't stick to us if we are not in a position to supply for the demand or cater to the demand. That causes reputational issues, goodwill issues also. Like this, many issues might be there practically that we don't need to really go into the research mode of stock out, but we need to understand what is it, because the short note question can be asked: what is inventory stock out and what could be the impact of stock out on an organization? So you can write both. There will be impacts in financial terms also as well as non-financial terms also, and the inventory control mechanisms of any organization shall be designed in such a way that the stock out situations be avoided. But while avoiding the stock out situations, it has also to be kept in mind that there should be a trade-off to be maintained between stock out cost and carrying cost. So same once again is the dilemma here. Too much of stock, it will carry high holding costs or carrying costs. Very less stock, that might carry stock out costs. Particularly, stock out cost is more applicable when there is a business being done by the organization and customers are not in a position to get the goods from us as they wanted because we don't have sufficient stock with us. So that is basically the loss of revenue, we can say. What is a major stock out cost? Loss of revenue. And we are talking about in general. In general, we are talking about this stock out cost. It could be even production also, but in general, we are talking about sales lost. That is a stock out cost we are talking about. So the point is, if it is related to the materials, there is a possibility of production losses also that can have its own cost also. That is also stock out cost. But in general, the stock out is a word which is used about when an item could not be supplied. Means what? We are talking about selling of an item, not using of an item. So naturally, this concept of stock out is more used for finished goods, more used for stock in trade, which we want to sell, than for materials. Does it mean we cannot use it for materials? We can. We can use the same word. Meaning is important. Meaning is stock out. But what are the losses of stock out of materials? That is production losses. Production will get stopped. That might cause definitely a lot of costs to be incurred without any productivity. That is stock out cost for materials. But again, we don't focus much on that. Mostly our focus, if at all a theory question is asked also, is the stock out costs of finished goods or stock in trade, which we wanted to sell, but we could not sell since there was no sufficient stock with us, though the customers requested for such product. That is the danger of stock out situation. But on the other side, if we are so conservative that we don't want a single customer to be turned away with lack of inventories, and we maintain so much high stock of inventories with that conservatism, which is okay, then there will not be stock out cost. But on the contrary, because you are holding lot of stocks, it will carry carrying costs. So that is why there should be a trade-off between these two, stock out costs and carrying costs. So that is the concept of stock out. So let us just quickly go through one of the examples that is given here in the ICI material, illustration number 7. It's more of a simple table than a problem. But understanding the concept of this is important, because this not only just uses normal inventory control techniques, it also uses the mathematical model of probability. So using that, how the best safety stock level can be fixed, let us understand. Tyro Tubes trades in four-wheelers, tires and tubes. What are their output or product in which they sell and buy are tires and tubes. That is their product. It stocks a sufficient quantity of tires, almost of every vehicle. Basically, they are selling tires. That's all. But in the year 1819, whatever, the report of the sales manager revealed that Tyro Tubes experienced the stock out of tires like this. So this is the stock out of tires. But actually in this problem, there is a problem, because this word stock out here indicates that these many number of tires could not be supplied. These many number of tires could not be supplied to the customers. Like that it indicates. But actually the essence, it is not actually stock out of tires. Ideally the heading should have been the demand for tires which could not be met. In other words, the stock out is not that 100 tires were asked, but we could not supply a single tire also. If that is the case, then the solution would be different. But here, what does the stock out mean from this question, as it is given here, is the demand of an item that could not be fulfilled due to the insufficient stock level. So that is the stock out we are talking about here. Situations we have to understand. This is not stock out number of tires. Situation of stock out appeared in these cases. Means what? Sometimes the customers asked for 100 tires, but we could not supply them. Like that, sometimes customers asked for 80 tires, but we could not supply to them 80. Maybe we could have supplied something less than that. When they asked for 100, we could not have supplied them 100, but maybe we would have supplied something else. Like that, this is not the number of tires which are not supplied. This number is basically the number of tires which the customers wanted. How much we supply That depends upon how much stock we will have. So these are the stock out situations of the tires which happened due to us having lesser stock than demanded by the customers. So this 100, 80, 50, 20, 10 and all is what? That is demanded by the customers, and in that situation we have experienced a stock out. Why we experienced a stock out? Because our actual stock is lesser than what they asked for. That's what is the situations here in different cases, we can say. Like that, so many times it so happened, sales manager has given a report how many times these things have happened, how many times they all happened has been also given. So from this we can easily find out what is the probability of this, each of the options, possibilities, how much. So mathematically we can find out what is the probability. If the customers asked for 100 tires, we could not deliver all the 100 tires because of a stock out situation. Because of a stock out situation, we could not do that. How many times it happened? 2 times it happened. This is number of occurrences. What are the total number of occurrences? What is the total number of occurrences? That you can total all of them. 7 plus 10, 17, 17 plus 20, 37, 37 plus 30, 67 plus 33, 100. So simply we don't have to worry about that total. It is also luckily 100. So when it is 100, naturally this is what each of them is a percentage: 2%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%, 33%. These are the probabilities of various situations that might have occurred, actually occurred. The same things might occur any time also. So there is a probability of different situations. But then the data is further given that Tyrotubes loses 150 rupees per unit due to stock out. So means if at all there is a stock out, when there will be a stock out? When the people asked for these many tires but we could not deliver them due to our low stocks, then we might experience a stock out. When we experience a stock out, naturally for each unit of stock out, customer came and we could not sell him. Of course, loss of revenue we cannot take because it is only revenue. So generally what should we take? What is the last amount here? That is the profit. Irrespective of that, that is given directly. If at all there is a stock out, for each unit we lose 150 rupees. So that is the loss of stock out. If at all we keep the materials in sense, in this case tires, we keep our stock in trade in the stock godown or in the shop or in the showroom, wherever we are selling, the carrying cost of that one unit of tire, each unit of tire is 50 rupees. So something, once again, the same point. A balance has to be maintained. If you keep maximum possible demand in the safety stock, then there may not be any stock out, not possible, but the carrying cost will be definitely high, no doubt about it. So if you keep lowest possible stock, which is 0 naturally, then there will be no carrying cost because you are not carrying any cost. But on the contrary, stock out cost might be much more. Somewhere in between, the decision has to be taken. So what is that optimum safety stock level is asked here. It is not safest, it is safety stock level. How much is that? Always better to be maintaining in the shop, selling these tubes and tires. So that is the question here. For that, we need to have different options. What all the things that we might have as possibilities. For example, just for understanding purposes, any numbers you can take, but because these numbers are given already, same numbers we are taking them. So let us say if you keep 100 units safety stock, or if you keep 80 units safety stock, like that, if you keep 50, if you keep 20, if you keep 10, if you don't keep any safety stock, like this, different possibilities are there. All that we need to do is calculate the cost of each possibility one by one. So let us take one by one. What are the possibilities? Let us say if we keep a safety stock of 100 units, first of all, is there a possibility of stock out? No, because the maximum demand that can be expected on one day from the customers is 100. So if at all you are maintaining a safety stock of 100, the possibility of stock out is 0. There is no stock out at all. There is no stock out in this situation at all. Or on the other side, if you want to say that, say I will take this as a probability. Yes, this is 33%. Here understand the other side. If you keep 100 safety stock, the possibility is 0 stock out. So 0 stock out can happen 33% of times. So even if you take 33 also here, then the probability or the 33 multiplied with 0, number of units is 0. So there is no amount that will come out here. So that is not at all required. If you have safety stock of 100 units, let us consider there is no stock out cost at all. Why? Because there is no number of units which are going to be stocked out. Since you have available, you have made your customers available all the units that maximum they can demand. And that is on a particular day, let us say 100 tires is the maximum demand. So in that case, the safety stock should be 100. Stockouts possibility is 0. There is no number of units of stockout in that case. So no stockout cost at all, that is 0. However, since you have to carry 100 tires and each tire costs so much per annum, that is 50 rupees per unit. So 50 into 100, that is 5,000 rupees is only the carrying cost that is there if this company Tyro Tubes carries 100 tires as its safety stock. That is the first situation. Then go to the second situation, that is 80 tires if at all you are maintaining as safety stock. So if 80 tires are maintained as a safety stock, once again what are the possibilities? If 80 tires are maintained and there is a demand for 100, imagine. So how many stock out units are there? Demand is for 100, stock out is 20. So 20 units stock out will be there. If people are asking for 100, but you have only 80, so 20 stock out is there. But what is the probability of that happening? That is 2% only, the first one. So 2% of this 20 multiplied with 2% of this 20 multiplied with 150 rupees, 150 rupees being the stock out cost. That gives us a total stock out cost of 60 rupees. On the other side, since you are carrying 80 tires in the inventories, each tire 50 rupees. So 4,000 rupees is carrying cost. So 4060 will be the total cost if we maintain a total number of units safety stock of 80 units. Like this it will continue. Like for example, if the company maintains 50 units safety stock, then what are the possibilities? There can be a demand of 100. In that case, there is a stock out of 50, right? And there is a demand of 80. That is another possibility. If the demand of 80 is there, but we have a stock of 50 only, that means 30 will be situation of stock out number of units. So demand of 50 has again two possibilities. Either the safety stock of 50 has two possibilities. You are maintaining safety stock of 50, but the demand is possibly 100 also, possibly 80 also. If the demand is 50, there is no problem. So there is no stock out. So all the other things will become irrelevant. When there will be an issue, when there will be a stock out cost, only if demand is either 100 or 80. If you are keeping 100 units safety stock, there is no possibility of stock out at all. But if you keep only 80 units safety stock, then there is a possibility of 20 units of stock out. But if you are keeping only 50 units of safety stock, then there are two possibilities. Either there may be a total demand for 100 units or there may be a total demand for 80 units, but you have a stock of 50 only. So if 100 units demand is there but a stock of 50 is there, 50 stock out. 80 units demand is there, 50 only you have safety stock, so another 30 stock out. So 50 and 30 are the possibilities. Respective probabilities you have 2% and 5%. Multiply them with the stock out cost of 150. So expected value this is called. So what is the expected stock out cost? Total put together 375. Do these calculations. But carrying cost is how much here? Because you are carrying 50 tires. 50 into 50, that comes to 2,500. So what is the total cost in this scenario is 2875. If you keep 100 tires, 5,000 is the total cost. If you keep only 80 tires in the stock, 4060 is the total cost. If you keep 50 tires only in the stock, then 2875 is the total cost. Same way, if you keep 20 tires in the stock, again all possibilities are there. Some days, 2 days at least, there will be people who will be asking for 100 tires, but you have only 20 tires, means the stock out is 80. Same way, people can ask for 80, but you have only 20 stock out of 60. Same way, people can ask for say 50, but you have a safety stock of only 20. That means there is a possibility of stock out of 30. Multiply with the respective probabilities, 2%, 5%, 10%. So 2, 5, 10. Then multiply with 150, which is the stock out cost. These two steps can be combined. You don't need to really do them two columns. There is no need of that because it's a standard amount. When there is a standard amount, there is no need of an intermittent calculation. So straight away you can do 20 into 0.02 into 150, like that. Here 80 into 0.02 into 150, 60 into 0.05 into 150, 30 into 0.01 into 150, like that. So that is a possible or probable stock out cost if a stock of 20 units is maintained. Then this is the stock out cost. Because you are maintaining 20 units, 20 into 50, 1000 is the carrying cost. Total cost is 2140. That is another situation of maintaining a safety stock of 20 units. Further continue and maintain a stock of only 10 units. Then there are many situations that are possible. You have a safety stock of 10, demand is 100. Then 90 stock out. Safety stock 10, demand was 80. Then stock out 70. Safety stock 10, demand let us say 50. Then stock out 40. Safety stock is 10, but the demand is 20. Then the stock out possibility is 10 units. So like this, different situations might be there, and attached probabilities are already calculated and kept ready. First you need to do this calculation. Luckily the total is 100, so 2%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 30 and 33. Of course the total has to be 100. When you take probability also, the total has to be 1. And when it is observations, here it is 100, so it is percentage wise, percentage total has to be always 100. So here those percentages can be taken as probabilities directly. So 10 units is safety stock if we maintain, but the demand is 100, 80, 50 or 20, then there will be a stock out of 90, 70, 40 and 10. Multiply with respected probabilities and 150 rupees, you get stock out cost. Since you are carrying only 50 tires, 10 tires, 50 rupees each, the carrying cost is only 500. But now what happened? The stock out costs have become more. They have crossed already. So earlier they were reducing up to here from 5000, further 4060, 2875, 2140. Then they started increasing. The total cost started increasing. So if the safety stock is maintained too low, that is also dangerous. Why? Because that is having a more stock out cost. Imagine the company is too aggressive or following a just-in-time system. That means zero stock. If zero stock is there, then there is a stock out of demand 100, demand 80, demand 50, demand 20, demand 10. 0 to 0 is not possible, not required. So this one you can just ignore. So the stock out situation, this itself is irrelevant. Zero stock out means zero demand. There is nothing there. Nobody is asking the tires. There will be days in a year when there may not be any sales, when there may not be any demand. Like that 33 times it so happened. No stock out also because of that. But other days are all possible. When you have no stock, but somebody asked that day for 100 tires, means you could not sell one tire also that time. Though you have a demand of 100, you could not sell. But like that you are not going to face every time. Only 2% of the times it is possible. So there is a possibility of stock out of 100 because you are having a 0. So 80, 50, 20 and 10. The same list what we have here. 100, 80, 50, 20 and 10. And percentages of probabilities are already available. Multiply them and then with 150 rupees stock out cost. So the total stock out cost in this case is rupees 2700. So when it is 2700 total stock out cost, carrying cost is 0 because you are not carrying any stock, but still the total cost is more. The total cost is 2700. 700, which is also higher. So what is the lowest one here? So definitely the lowest one is 2140. So what is the better safety stock to be maintained is 20. So you don't have to maintain too much of safety stock also, like 100, 80 and 50. If you maintain them, your stock out cost will be very less. That is for sure. You don't have to turn away any customers. But on the contrary, the carrying costs are much high. So that is not a good thing. So what is the best thing here to be doing is, if you maintain a safety stock of 20, yes, there will be situations where there is possibility of stock out. You have only 20 tires, there is a 2% possibility that people might come and ask for 100 tires. Then you have a possible stock out of 80. There is a 5% probability that people might come and ask for 80 tires. Then you have a stock out of 60. And same way, there is a possibility for people to have come and asked for 50 tires. Still you could not deliver because you have only 20. There is a possibility of stock out of 30. So these possibilities are there, but still we can take that chance. Why? Because the total cost is lower. Though there is a possibility of stock out cost, we are maintaining a balance between the carrying cost and stock out cost. Just because we don't want to turn away a single customer also, if that is the idea, if that is the policy of the organization, salespeople definitely want that. That is always one of the things between salespeople and accounting people. Salespeople never want the customers to be turned away. No. For that, they want huge stocks to be maintained every time. If customer comes and asks, if there is no stock, the salespeople will get embarrassed. They will say, "Arre, we lost the sale." But in order to not get embarrassed, if we keep too much of stock, embarrassment is one part. The financial cost of that is too high. If you keep 100 safety stock, fantastic actually, because never you are going to turn away anybody, because any time maximum what people can come and ask you is only 100. So you have 100, so probability of or the stock out situation itself is possibly zero. No stock out at all will happen. Zero stock out cost will be there. But on the contrary, the carrying cost is too high since you are carrying a very high level of inventory. That is not correct also. Too low stocks also dangerous, though they will carry zero carrying cost. That is a good part. But bad part is, because of this one, of course, non-financial reasons, you can lose reputation and all. But financially also, these things might happen. We are not talking about them separately happening, but collectively put together, expected stock out cost of 2,700 might be there, whereas the total cost here is only 2,140. So here this is 2,700, so it is more costly than the option of keeping 20 safety stock. So 10 is also costly, 0 is also costly, 50, 80, 100 are definitely costlier. What is the optimum safety stock level in this case is 20 units. That is the final answer. The safety stock level of 20 units, the total cost is least, which is 2,140, and that's what you will suggest. Okay, for this working notes, of course, you will write how to calculate a probability and all. This is a straightforward thing. And this is explanation for your understanding. You don't need to write this in the examination. So if at all you have a safety stock of 100, no stock out. If at all there is a safety stock of 80, then there is a possibility of 100 being asked and 20 stock out. If there is a safety stock of 50, then there are multiple possibilities. 100 units can be asked, then there is a 50 stock out. 80 units can be asked, then there is 30 stock out. Same way. If you keep a safety stock of 20, again multiple possibilities. 100 units demand means 80 stock out. 80 units demand means 60 stock out. And 50 units demand means 30 stock out. So simply understand this point here. This is where I am again referring to. This is not actually stock out of tires. Stock out situation, yes, no doubt. But this is not the number of tires of stock out. This is the demand. Demand 100, 80, 50, 20, 10, 0. Possibilities are this. So situations of stock out arise in case of demands like this. That is how it has to be understood. Ideally, the heading should have been like that, or at least a note has to be given, but this is only for practice question. So such question can be expected in exam also with a proper heading. So heading is definitely wrong here. It could have been better. So stock out of tires, people get a wrong meaning. So again, that's an interpretation issue. Let us not get into wrong interpretation. Correctly, what we should understand is the demand of tires. Demand of tires in stock out situations. This is not stock out number of tires, this is the stock out situations. So why stock out situation has arisen? Because naturally when the demand is high but your safety stock is low, then stock out situation will arise. These are the various situations, various probabilities with which there is a stock out cost and also the carrying cost. And a level where both are balanced is what is the optimum or best safety stock level. We don't have any formula for this and all. This is not EOQ, and these two need not be equal, by the way. So don't get into unnecessary imaginations. We want total cost to be minimum. That is our objective. Which technique we follow, nobody cares. So which level of safety stock will give us the lowest cost? That is what we have to explain. That is what you have to prove with numbers. That is one type of question related to stock out situations using probability technique. Then there is another concept of just-in-time inventory management. It's a theoretical question, generally very repeatedly asked question. A short note on just-in-time you should be able to write. So as the name indicates, just-in-time, popularly called in the entire world as ZIT, originally conceived by Toyota and later used by many companies in the world. One of the most popular management techniques in the world, Japanese technique, originally, later everybody is using them, is ZIT, that is called just in time. Simply what is that? Just in time is nothing but zero inventory. Zero inventories, that's all. So what is zero inventory? Why it contemplates zero inventory? Because basically they don't want any storage cost at all attached with inventories. For that purpose, they will purchase the materials only when there is a production. When there is a requirement of materials in the production, then only it will purchase the material. So it will produce the goods when it is required. It will purchase the material when it is required for production. And the products should be delivered to the customers also only when they want. Means excessive stocks will not be maintained. Like for example, if you apply to a car manufacturing industry, it is like a backward technique. Normally, just two simple products if you take, soaps. Soap is just a small product, a FMCG product. But if you take a soap as a product manufacturing, they will do push into the market. What they will do is called push. Normally, most of the production methodologies in the world are push systems. Push means they manufacture and they will throw them in the market, and whatever people want, they will purchase. And that is how, on a general basis, the companies will estimate the demand and push their products into the market. On the other side, the products like cars, for example, of course, I'm not saying that all cars are using just-in-time, all companies are using them. If they are using just-in-time, that is called as a pull system. What is the difference between push and pull system? Here, customer places the demand, means he places an order, he books the car, he goes to a showroom and asks for, I want a so-and-so model car, this color, these specifications. Like that, he will place an order first of all in the showroom. Immediately, the moment he places an order, of course with some money and all, money things let us not involve them. They will be anyway, they are part of it. We are talking about procedure mostly. So if the customer asks for or requests for the car by entering into a showroom and confirming his purchase, immediately that is entered in the system, and that will be reflected in the manufacturer's production manager's system. Production manager will look at this. Okay, I have a car to be manufactured with this specification, and that specification car will be manufactured. Because of the technology, they can do that in a very quick time. Of course, quick time does not mean customer wants it and just like that we can print it and give it. It will take reasonable time, but relatively compared to earlier, nowadays it is all very quick. So then accordingly, the production will manufacture and then the delivery of car will happen to the customers in a very short period of time. So the delivery to the customers happens when they want it, when we will produce, when we want it. When we will produce, naturally when there is a requirement for delivery to the customers, then only we will produce. When we produce, then only we purchase material. So everything is pull here, not push. Manufacturing and throwing into the market is push. Manufacturing, according to the requirements of the market is pull. So what we are talking about, this is called as a demand pull system, or just pull through system of production. Lean manufacturing, lot of names are there here, all of them are big management techniques. Usually the production managers, engineers will apply these concepts. For us it is a basic we can say theory question for 5 marks. Okay, what happens here, this is what happens here in general. Demand for the final product, just understand, for understanding purposes you can understand this system with reference to an example of car, that is easier. Of course it's not so irrelevant also, because this system itself was invented by Toyota, so naturally they have followed this. They did not just give some lectures in the management business schools, they followed this system and they have achieved good results by following this system. So what happens is, first there will be a demand for final product from the customer, then after that the production starts to process the demand for the product. Then once the production requires the material requirement is sent to the purchase department, then the purchase department orders for raw materials is sent to the supplier, then the supplier sent materials for production. See, normally what happens is reverse, right? If you just remember our general process, normally we buy the material. Of course this process is internal, we buy the material, then produce, this is what happens, then use that material for production, then once production is done, then we'll sell it to the customers. That's what we do. Production is first, sell is later, naturally. In the simple way, just reverse it. Here what happened, sale is first, demand for the final product has come first, order has come first. Immediately the production starts and everything else will fall in place. Whatever material is required for that production will be asked by the production department to the purchase department. Purchase department will do its own procedure to buy those materials and get them delivered to their place, and then using that materials they start the production. So like this, it is a little bit of reverse mechanism that happens, so that you cannot use this reverse and all. Normally the production is a push system, this is a pull system. You have to call this as a pull system or pull through system of production. You normally use this example for understanding only, don't use it in exam. For restaurants, for example, if you go to a restaurant, is it a push system or pull system? Depends. Generally most of the places the biryani is push system, because that is already ready made. They already manufacture certain amount of biryani for a particular day, and as and when a customer goes and orders for it, immediately they will put it in a plate and give it. So that is a push system. Manufactured, a certain amount of production is already done, and that is just pushed to the customers. Of course here the challenge is how much to cook, how much to manufacture, that question will be always there. So there are some problems with this method also. However, with the experience they will understand how much to actually manufacture. Some days it will be a little more wasted, yes, some days it may be a little less, like that they will balance. But still the system works the same way. For production first, sale later. Then on the other side, pull system. Go to a restaurant which is having a la carte menu, where you go and order. After looking at the menu, you ordered for something, then they start manufacturing it. So how it works, if you just imagine, the waiter comes to you and takes the order, the steward comes to you and takes the order. So that is where the order is given, the demand for final product is given. And nowadays some of the restaurants are using actually the electronic equipments and devices also. They will just update it on their say, let us say a tablet, and automatically this is popped up where to the production, and they start producing it in the kitchen. Of course, if they follow just in time, they have to then order the materials, then they have to get the materials, and then they have to start production. So this generally does not happen in the restaurants. So as far as materials is concerned, the restaurants keep their stock, but production definitely happens on just in time method. So this just in time has both the things actually. Production also should happen just in time, purchase also should happen just in time, sale or the final delivery to the customer also should happen just in time. In other words, no stocks at all levels, no material stock. No material stock means what? Purchase should happen just in time. No work in progress stock. No work in progress. Nothing called work in progress here. What is the use of work in progress? Why do you keep work in progress? Nobody keeps it. It is just done, complete and send it. That's it. So no work in progress, because production happens only just in time. No finished goods stock here. Why? Because the production itself happens and is delivered also just in time. So none of the inventories are required here for just in time system. That's what popularly is used by many companies. So this is what generally as a simple understanding just in time system can be understood in this way. You can write these things in exam as points, some of the important aspects. Say for example, here. So what are the four aspects here? First of all, zero failures, that is a part of this system. Lean management, Six Sigma, just in time, all these things are linked to each other. Kanban, so many Japanese techniques are there. We don't need all of them. We are not going to be production managers. We are not engineers. So understand it for general understanding purposes, for inventory management purposes only. But this is not just an inventory management technique. It is a production management technique also, which we don't require. So zero failures, zero delay, zero lead time, zero inventory. That's what generally the just-in-time follows. And what is the ultimate objective here? We need to reduce the setup costs. No need of any setup costs. Reduce the variability. Changes will not be there. Reduce the inventory and reduce the lot size. So everything has to be reduced. So that is why called a lean system. Lean means one way we can say thin system, not a thick system. Too much of heavy amounts of inventories will not be maintained. Production will not happen excessively. Godowns will not be filled with our materials. That is how generally just-in-time system works. Of course, there are many points we can discuss about it. Just-in-time itself is actually most of the topics in this chapter are so practical in real life factories. If we really go there also, we can observe many of these things. But the point is, we have our own limitations. We don't need that. So we are not really going to see the material procurement actually. But these all things happen. There is definitely an application of almost every item here. Whatever the topic discussed in this materials chapter is happening really out there. But again, on the other side, we are learning more from a classroom application or a general understanding point of view, examination point of view. So yes, we should have an imagination, no doubt. But on the other side, really to see them, we need to be physically visiting the factories, that too good factories, not a small plant. So that is not quite practical for us. That is why you can just imagine and go through internet if you really are interested in how these systems are actually working. It's a huge concept. There will be days and days of seminars on just in time. We don't need really that much stuff. All that you need is a short note for 5 marks. How much content you want to maintain or keep for a 5 marks question, that you should keep it ready for JIT. Very important theory question. So that is one more technique of inventory control, we can say. Like this, there are other types of techniques also. We can call them popularly discriminative inventory control mechanisms, or you can call that as relative classification or classification of inventories on different basis. Popularly, it is called as discriminative inventory control. Discriminative means we are discriminating the materials. We are not focusing on all the materials in the same way. What are those possible techniques? These are all various names. All of them are practically useful in real life. But for us, each of them is only a theory question. At the maximum, some case-based practical question also is possible on particularly ABC analysis. So what is ABC analysis? It should not be mixed with activity-based costing. ABC is a different method of costing. That is activity-based costing. That is different. This is different. We should not mix that. ABC analysis is normal alphabet ABC, normally. This is what probably our unfortunate education system has made students also into different grades, no? A grade, B grade, C grade, and all that. That thing we are talking. So it is like grading the materials here. So like on the basis of what? Generally the value of the materials will be graded like A category, B category, and C category. That is one kind of classification, discrimination, like that. Another category is FSN, popularly called FSN. Name itself indicates fast moving, slow moving, non-moving. Fast moving means they will be used very frequently. Slow moving means less frequently. Non-moving means rarely those are all used. If you observe, for many of the topics in materials, you just look into your house, you will get the answers. Just in time, are we following? A lot of times, some houses follow just in time. when the guest comes, suddenly somebody comes to our house, there will not be anything to give them. So just in time we go to the shop and bring something. That is just in time. Or we are going to imagine, oh, maybe our guests will come, like that we are going to keep the stocks. Possible. Some people do that. So they keep too much of safety stock. Such kind of categories also will be there. So different people are there, different psychologies are there, but those are personal level. If you apply them scientifically using proper techniques like this, probability techniques or classification techniques, using them, if you do it, that becomes little professional inventory management. But point is, inventory management everybody does on a day-to-day basis. Normally also we do that. How inventory management is done on a day-to-day basis is a very interesting thing to observe. If you can apply these concepts to what you can see around your house, that itself is a part of inventory management. On a normal days, don't keep exceptional situations into this. See, normally do we categorize our materials into ABC or not? Where do we keep our footwear, chappals and all? Do we keep them in a big almara? Definitely not. Not only just because of the dirt they carry. A lot of other things actually carry a lot of more dirt. Vacuum cleaner will have a lot of dirt inside, but that will be there somewhere stored inside the house. But footwear is outside the house. Why is that? Because of category of that. So that is C category item. The value generally, that's what we think. Of course, sometimes it so happens people may not be really understanding the value of it. So they may be having a usage of different methodology. Categorization wise, not necessarily that my classification and your classification are same. Not necessarily that one company's classification and another company's classification are same. That is their choice. But definitely there is classification. Gold will be inside a locker, that is A category item, though small in size, huge number, amount wise. Like cloths and all will be there, but not that safe, no locked and all. General cupboards they will be lying somewhere. Those are all B category items. Footwear will be outside the house. That is C category item. So that is a simple understanding of inventory management in our house. What we see on a daily basis. It happens. Same way, fast moving, slow moving, non-moving items will also be there. Just go and check your kitchen, you can see everything here. In the kitchen itself, all inventory management can be understood. Fast moving items, sugar, salt, these things, definitely they move fast, daily use them. Definitely they are used very, very frequently. Slow moving items, maybe rarely they are all used. Occasionally, if some snacks are made, something like that. Those are all slow moving items. Non-moving items, they will be there, but they will not be used very frequently. Very rarely only they are all going to be used. Those are called non-moving items, almost stagnant items, but still they will be there. So much of items. Just look around your house and see some items, observe them. When was the last time you ever touched it? When was the last time anybody in your family ever touched it or used it? So many items will be there. We will have around us, but we would not have used them also. Those are all non-moving items, actually useless items, but we keep them. That is our psychology. So we keep them. That is at house level. But even company level, if you keep them, that is a problem. So non-moving items should not be kept at high quantities. Fast moving items should be kept at high quantities. Slow moving items, moderate quantities, like that. A category, B category, C category. High value items, A category. Medium value items, B category. Low value items, C category, like that. Same way you can use the same other acronym called VED analysis. That is vital, essential and desirable. Same thing. Vital means very important. Essential, important, but not as important as vital. Desirable means better they are there, but not that they're like desperately needed. Desirable. If they are there, that is good. Not there also chalta. Those are desirable types. So like this vital, essential, desirable is another category of classification. Like this, the names themselves will indicate high, medium, low on the basis of the price. So high priced goods, medium priced goods, low priced goods. Like many are there, but usually the first two are popular. One is ABC analysis, second one is FSN analysis. VED also is okay. Questions can be asked on that. But majorly the important in this all category of discriminative inventory control policy is ABC analysis. A category, B category and C category items. So this is a subjective assignment. You have to understand that it is not something which all people will get same categorizations. Some people have to use their judgment. But in general, what is the criteria using which you have to categorize them? We cannot say, I think chappals are very important, so I'll keep them in the locker. Then that's up to you. Nobody is going to question you on that. It is your choice. But that sounds stupid for other people. But the point is not about being subjective means we can do illogical things, but the logic has to be still followed. What is the logic for A, B, C classification in general is A category items are those simple. Quantity wise, they are less. Quantity wise, around. Don't again go with exact numbers. These type of possible questions are more practical in nature than academic. So you cannot expect 10% means I will have 10% only, not here and there. No, not like that. Approximately 10% of the value, 10% of the quantity will represent around 70% of the value. That is A category items. Again, I'm telling you, these are percentages indicative. Simply, what is the essence you have to understand? Quantity is very low, small in quantity, value wise high. For example, in our homes, gold and other jewelry is the best example. Quantity is very small, value is very high. That category is A category. Second category is B category, relatively less important. Approximately, they'll carry 20% of the total quantity. Value also will be approximately 20% of total investment in inventories. That is B category, moderate category, you can say. C category is what? They will have a lot of quantity, 70% of the total quantity will be there, but value will be only 10%. So quantity high reverse to A category is a C category. Quantity is high for C category, but value is very low. That is called C category items. Like this, inventories can be classified into 3 different categories, and control can be discriminated. You don't need to have high level of control on C category items. You don't need to have a lock and all to C category items. Normally, they can be just kept outside, no much of control on them. So you can observe that at your home also for understanding purposes. What are the A category items, what are the B category items, and what are the C category items. Again, I'm telling you, the classification can change from person to person, family to family. Don't worry about that. What is important to be remembered or noted is the concept. The concept is A category items are low in quantity, high in value. C category items are high in quantity, low in value. B category items are moderate, reasonable, same quantity, reasonably same percentage of value. That is a classification. So if you look at A category items, quantity is less, value is more. So 20% only is the quantity. But see how much we are talking about almost 80% of the value they have. Already some people are thinking, sorry, just now you told 70%, why you are telling 80%? Just now I also told, don't worry about those percentages. Those are not something like rock solid scientific numbers. Those are approximate indicators, just given for understanding purposes. So there is no rule that, oh, A category means that should be exactly 20% of quantity, exactly 80%. No, nobody said that. Approximately somewhere around that 70, 80, 60, whatever you want to give. But point is low quantity of materials, high value of materials. That's it. That is A category items. B category items are these. So they are more flat in nature. So what is there here? Almost 20 to 60 means around 40% value, percent of quantity they are occupying, but only around 15% here in this example of the value they are having. Like that is B category. C category almost they are having here almost another 40. So another 40% they have, but the value is only what they are occupying is less than 5. So huge quantity but less in value. Like that, A, B, C categories are there. Once again, any more too much of observations in this, B and C are looking same here. I know that all those things are not required. Understand the concept. Don't try to apply all our logics and great analytical skills on the things which are not required to be applied. All that we need to apply is, yes, concept you have to apply. What is the concept? Low category, low quantity, high value, high quantity, low value. That is A and C. First identify them, remaining put them in B. There ends the matter. That is the easiest way. So like this, practical questions can be given sometimes, like illustration 8 that was given in the essay material. Draw a plan of ABC selective control is asking. Draw. Draw does not mean draw a plan means people will start drawing a graph. No, draw means he means tell or start explaining about a plan of ABC. Like this, what is given? There are different items given, 12 different items, units is given, unit cost is given. So first and foremost thing what you have to do is multiply these two. units with unit cost, so that you will have what? So that you will have total cost. First job is that. You have to do that. These are all just calculations, clerical things. Nothing to explain here. Units multiply with unit cost, what you will get? That you will get total cost. So for example, here first one, 7,000 units. Unit cost is 5 rupees. So 7,000 into 5, that is 35,000. Like that you do for all the items, right? Then you take two percentages one by one. First percentage is what is the percentage of this item number in units in the total number of units. For that you need to do what? First of all, you have to take the total number of units, which is 2,19,000. So here 7,000 divided by 2,19,000 into 100. So how much percentage of item 1 materials are there in quantity? This is quantity only, no rupees here. How much quantity is there? Around 3%. So here you don't need 4 decimals. This is all computer done, so don't worry about it. 2 decimals you can round it approximately. So out of the total materials of 12 categories of items, 12 different types of materials, category 1 or first category of materials is having 3.2% approximately of the total quantity. So this is having 3.2%. But same way you have to do another exercise. Unit cost and all, if you do, that is useless. You have to take total cost. Total cost is 3,55,770. In that 35,000 is how much? Approximately 10%. Approximately 10%. So from this you cannot judge anything. You cannot judge anything from the numbers. But yes, first you have to calculate them. What will calculate them? Total of units and percentage of each category of units in the total. 7,000 divided by 2,19,000 into 100. 24,000 divided by 2,19,000 into 100. Like this you have to do percentages for quantities. Then you have to multiply the number of units with unit cost. This is one exercise required to have this column. Then you find out percentage of this cost with total cost. So 35,000 divided by 3,55,770 into 100 and so on, etc. So then you get percentage like this. So then what you will do is give the ranking. So ranking means what? This percentage, whichever is having the highest percentage, give it one first rank. Highest percentage here, that is first rank. Then second rank, then third rank, like that. Give the ranking for 12 different items which are all there here. Give them the ranking. Then the top category items are all called A category. Again, sir, should we take only 50,000? How do we know it is 50? Nobody knows 50,000. Your job, your assumption, whatever you can take, no problem. Just take some basis. Some basis has to be taken. So A category items are those which are having a high value in nature. High value or high percentage you can say actually. So percentage here is high for what? That is first 11, item number 11 has too much of percentage. That is the first rank. Second rank is how much? This one 20% almost they are having. Right? So only quantity wise only 11%, but cost wise 20%. Like this you can have any selective methodology as per your choice. So take these items which are of high value in nature into A category. According to this example, what are all taken? Item number 11 is taken and percentage of units is only 5%, but percentage of value is 23%. Unit number 2 is taken, category item unit number 2 and this one. This 20% is there almost. So that is also taken into A category because the units quantity wise it is less, whereas value wise it is little more, definitely. So these are the unit number 11 and unit number, code number you can call 2. Then 5 is also taken here, just in the example. Around 16% of the total value is categorized by these three things only, if you observe. So 23 plus 20, 43 plus around 16, around 59% approximately here. That's what is given the total. That is all A category. Now already some people are thinking, sir, you told 70%. No, sir, I never told anything. Nobody told anything. That is an indicative. This 70%, this 80%. These are all indicative things. Now I want to include this also. Which one? This item number 4 also here because it is also 9%. I will include 4 also in A category. Please do that. Nobody is going to stop you. Please do that. You can keep it here, no problem. You can keep other things there, no problem. So you do whatever you want to do, but logically. I will keep this one into A category. That is absurd. I will keep 22% into C category. Absurd. So majorly what is contributing to the value, total value of the materials, that you keep it in the A category. Even keeping item number 4 in A category is not a problem. It can be done. Even 5 also you keep in the A category, not a problem. That's not an issue. You do that, no issues. But B category is like this. If you observe the 6 and 3, item number 6 and item number 3. So item number 6 is having how much? Just 18% of quantity, but only 5% of value. Same item number 3 is having quantity less, but 4% of value, but still 4% is not as high as that. So the point here is, once again, you have to apply your judgment, sir. I would suggest to do this way. Forget about B category first. Identify the items of high value first, percentage of total cost, reach up to 60 to 70% somewhere, keep them there. Then identify the quantities. Don't first look at values, highest ones keep it in A category. Then look at quantities up to reach around 40 to 50%, that is keep it under C category. Remaining you keep it under B category. That is easier rather than breaking your heads. What is A, what is B, what is C? Highest in value A category, highest in quantity C category, remaining in B category. Like that you do the classification according to your convenience and judgment. There is no hard and fast rule for this question. There is no one answer for this question. Each selective itself means subjective, judgmental, discriminatory. So that is why such questions are more like a art than a science. But the concept of ABC analysis is a science. Very popular technique, no doubt. Practically, for us, it's a short note question at the maximum, or a question like this, a problem to classify the materials according to their contribution to the total value of materials. That's it. That is ABC analysis. Of course, another theory question is also given a lot of times. Advantages of ABC analysis. There will be continuity in production because you will focus on those items very closely. Cost will be less attention required, systematic working. These are all just always theory questions from anywhere can be asked. I don't have to tell that every time. Already I told you, this chapter is a very hard chapter. For one theory question guaranteed, one problem guaranteed, that is for sure. If the problem by chance given for 10 marks, then only theory question will be dropped. If problem is asked for 5 marks, almost it is 100% guaranteed that there will be a theory question from this chapter in the main examination. So important chapter even from other perspective, theory perspective also. Then on the next illustration, it was given about same ABC types situation. Once again, judgment, nothing to calculate, already given. So here what is this? Number of varieties of inventory is this. 96% of them are having only how much? That is the value of inventory holding average is 20%, value of usage in the end product is only 5% we are talking here. So these are the kinds of products. Quantity wise too much, but value wise it is only very less. So look at this one by one, various categories of items. Percentage wise, the quantity here is for 15 items very less. Only 15 items are there, but value is very high. So these all can be considered as A category items. That is first category of items. Then another things. So first A category items, what are all there? This one, this 0.375% ones, right? And 50% of course is already given. Highest in consumption, already that is also given. So that is A category items. These 15 items can be called A category items. Definitely 3875 or C category, that is clear, because too much number in what you call quantity, but very less in value. So this is definitely C category item. So only 3 are there. So this is A. So if this is C, naturally the remaining will be B. So that's it. That's by observation itself we can find out what is the nature of these items. But you write the logic in the examination. How did you classify? Here less in quantity, more in value. More in quantity, less in value. Here more or less same and same. So this 110 items are B category items. 15 items are A category items. 3875 are C category items. That is a question related to classification of materials using ABC analysis. Like that, FSN analysis can be done. Name itself is self-explanatory. Fast moving, slow moving, non-moving. Moving does not mean materials are all having wheels and they are moving on themselves. Moving means usefulness. Particularly if it is a material, when it is used in the production, how much more the usage of the material is there, that means it is fast moving. No sir, I want to use this technology for let us say finished goods, for the traders. For them also they know very well. You go to a shop, There will be certain items which are fast moving, means many people will buy them. Those are called fast moving materials. But still there will be some items slow moving and non moving. So next time, if at all you want to apply this, go to a supermarket whenever, not for this purpose. Whenever next time you go to a supermarket, identify the items according to your judgment, how they are fast moving or fast slow moving or non moving items. There will be all categories of items in the supermarket, bigger ones. Normal shops, small kirana shops, usually they don't keep non moving items because they cannot afford to keep them. But big supermarkets keep them also non-moving items. They will be there maybe once in a year, twice in a year. Somebody will come. For them also they'll keep it. So they'll have huge carrying costs because of that. So fast-moving items are those which are very frequently used. Slow-moving items are used but less frequently. Non-moving items much less frequently. Like that. Same way VED analysis: vital, essential, and desirable. Names themselves will indicate. Same way HML: high cost, medium cost, low cost. So these are all various discriminatory inventory control policies. That is one technique of inventory controls. Then a ratio analysis can also be used for inventory control. Various types of ratios can be calculated. One such ratio is input-output ratio. Input-output ratio is simply the ratio of quantity of input of material to the production and the standard material content of the actual output. In other words, how much is the actual input that is really happening divided by how much should have been the actual input according to the standard. So that is called input-output ratio. So that is the input-output ratio formula. In other words, what this tells us, that tells us about the usage of the material, whether the usage is happening properly or not, whether the material is giving real productivity or not. But of course, we'll come to these type of ratios later in standard costing. Then it will be easier to understand the concepts of efficiency, productivity, usage of materials, yield. Popularly, this is called yield. All those things, we will come to them in detail in standard costing chapter. But simply it is a ratio which tells us whether the inputs are being properly used or not. That is input-output ratio. But the most popular ratio that is used is commonly in this chapter also is inventory turnover ratio. Inventory turnover ratio can be again calculated for two things, one for materials, other one for finished goods. If it is for finished goods, then the same inventory turnover ratio can be calculated like this: the cost of goods sold divided by average stock. Average stock is always common in the denominator, but which stock we are talking here? Average stock means here when we are talking about cost of goods sold, the average stock here is which stock? That is finished goods. When we are talking numerator is related to cost of goods sold, what are we selling them? Are we selling materials? No, we are selling finished goods. So cost of goods sold means of that finished goods divided by average stock of finished goods. That's it. That is inventory turnover ratio for final goods, finished goods, or for traders. That itself is inventory turnover ratio because they will not have different types of inventories. If for traders there is only one inventory, that is stock in trade. Always the thing what they buy and sell. For manufacturers, there will be three types of inventories. There will be raw materials, there will be work in progress, and there will be finished goods also. All the three types will be there only for manufacturers, not for everybody. So all the three categories will have inventory turnover ratios. We don't need all of them. Particularly what we need here is for finished goods, that is cost of goods sold by average stock, and most importantly for materials also. So in the case of materials inventory turnover ratio, the numerator is different. The cost of materials consumed during the period divided by the average stock held during the period. And what is average stock? Always opening stock plus closing stock divided by 2. That is the inventory turnover ratio. Which inventory we are talking? Raw material inventory. So what is there in the numerator? That is why cost of materials consumed. So how to get cost of materials consumed? You cannot ask now. We already should know that. How to get cost of materials consumed? Material consumed is nothing but opening stock of raw materials plus purchases of raw materials minus closing stock of raw materials. That gives us cost of raw materials consumed divided by average stock. How to get, sir? Opening stock plus closing stock divided by 2. But the point here is you cannot mess up the numerator and denominator. Numerator you cannot take for raw material, denominator you cannot take for finished goods. Be careful. If you are taking numerator for finished goods, average stock of finished goods will be in the denominator. If you take cost of raw materials consumed in the numerator, then denominator will have the raw material stock average, stock of raw materials. So numerator denominator should be related to each other blindly because there is a formula, because some numbers are available in the question. You cannot blindly substitute and get the answer. That will not be the answer if those numbers are not matching with the formula. So be very clear what formula you are using, why are you using, in which context you are using. That all makes sense. Just a formula, numbers, giving some answer, finding that, oh, something, some number I got. That will not have any meaningful interpretation at all. So be careful in that case. And after that, there is one more formula, that is for the average number of days of inventory holding. So we can call this as holding period of inventories. Holding period of inventories, how can we calculate? We can express it in days also, months also. If we want to express it in days, we can take 360 by inventory turnover ratio. If we want to express it in months, we can take 12 months divided by inventory turnover ratio. So first we will find out inventory turnover ratio. Then we can also find out inventory holding period. That is the number of days of inventory holding. 360 or 12 months divided by one of them only, and not both. And already some people are thinking, sir, why 360? Why not 365? So take 365 also, sir, no problem, don't worry. Nobody is going to really ask you if you take 365 also, 360 also. Indicative things, most of them are indicative. There is no big deal about them. Don't focus on unnecessary details. Yes, it's a good thing that we observe that, but that is unnecessary. 365 if you take also, nothing is going to happen. But it will tell us the number of days on an average. It's all average things, just for understanding purposes. If the question says 360, then you cannot show Chadastam and say that I will take 365 only, I will take 366 because we are in 2020. All these things cannot work here. According to question, we have to answer. If nothing is mentioned, your choice. You take 365 or 360, that is okay. I will take 120 days in a year. No, that is not a choice. Not that choice. Approximately 360 days is okay. In general, for all the ratio analysis, usually we take 360 days. What is the rule behind that? No rule. We are not talking about taxation. We are not talking about any law here. So these are not rules. This is what generally happens. You want to follow, follow. You don't want to follow, don't follow. That's not an issue. 365 also I will take. That is not an issue. But naturally we suggest 360 days. That is the better way of calculating inventory turnover ratio if nothing is given. Divided by what? Inventory turnover ratio. So that will give us inventory holding period. That is another formula we need to remember definitely, and this formula you have to apply if that is asked. And what is the use of this? It will tell us the fast moving and slow moving items very easily. That's the advantage of this data. Let us apply that, it will be easy to understand. Look at this, the opening stock of materials is given at 90,000 rupees. Purchases are 2,70,000. Closing stock is 1,10,000. All are rupees, by the way. So that is the material X related data. What first is asked is inventory turnover ratio. Then the second is number of days for which the average inventory is held. The same two formula you can use here directly here. Inventory turnover ratio formula: cost of raw material consumed divided by average stock of raw material. You have to calculate each of them separately in the working note preferably. Opening stock 90 plus purchases 2,70,000 minus closing stock 1,10,000. So what is the cost of raw materials consumed? 270 plus 90. 360 minus 110 means 250,000. That is 2,50,000 in the numerator. Divided by average stock means what? Opening stock plus closing stock divided by 2. Opening stock plus closing stock divided by 2. 90 plus 110 by 2 means 1 lakh. So that means what is the inventory turnover ratio? 2.5. We have to call that times. 2.5 times is the inventory turnover ratio. 2.5 times it is. That is the first question answer. Second question answer: number of days for which the inventory is held. Number of days. See here 365 is taken, so don't worry. It is not 360, it is 365. So here the formula it is 360 given, here 365 taken. I say is wrong. No, let it be. Leave them, let them breathe. Let us breathe also. So 360 you want to take, 365 you want to take, I don't mind. Nobody is going to care about it. So take 365 if you want. So 365 divided by 2.5. How many days here? This year you can keep rounded number better. Don't say 144.2 days. Morning 11 o'clock it is there. 12 o'clock 3 minutes this turnover is going to be over, material is going to be over. None of those interpretations we can draw. This is not at all reality. This is an average, just an indicative number. Indicative numbers have very limited objective. So accordingly only our seriousness of calculating also should be there. So unnecessarily we don't have to be too serious about it. Approximately, what is the average number of days for which the inventory is held? 146 days. Does it mean every inventory is held for 146 days, then only it is used or sold? Here it is used because we are talking raw materials. No, we are not talking about that. So the point is, irrespective of the kind of materials, we have to understand the inventory turnover ratio indicates how many times the raw materials are circulating in a year. Each time the raw materials are used, that is a cycle. Like that, how many times they are circulating. So that each cycle is one turnover, one time. So like this, how many times they are circulating? 2.5 times they are circulating. That means on an average, how many days they are held in the godown? On an average, 146 days they are held. Never to take any of these things literally. There is nothing that we can technically draw from this. But yes, but are they useless? That means no. They are not useless. They are fantastic indicators of what is the type of material this is. What kind of material this is. Comparatively, if you do this comparison with some other material, then you can understand the nature of the material. For example, there is a, just for understanding, here it is, I think next one is given already. So that gives us an understanding of what is the application of this. Why are we doing this ratio analysis? Why are we calculating this? You can first calculate the ratios accordingly. Here for the next illustration 11, material A and material B, opening stock, purchases, closing stock, all are given. So take opening stock, purchase, closing stock, you get material consumed, you know that. Average inventory you first find out, opening plus closing by 2. Then find out the inventory turnover ratio, materials we are talking, which is nothing but, what is that? Cost of raw material consumed 56,000 divided by 8,000, which is 7 times. That is material A. Material A inventory turnover ratio is 7 times. Material B inventory turnover ratio similarly is 2.5 times. Which means what? Material A has an inventory holding period of 365 divided by 7. Or 360 divided by 7, whatever you do. 52 approximately. Or 2.5 times means 146 days. Now the question is, which is fast moving, which is slow moving? Because B is staying in the godown for 146 days, A is staying in the godown 52 days only. So which is fast moving? Definitely material A is fast moving material compared to B. Compared to B. So when we are classifying the materials according to their relative speed of consumption, which is the which is the one which is consumed very quickly, that is material A, and material B is consumed slowly because the inventory turnover ratio for material B is less. In an entire year, it is only doing 2 rounds, 2.5 rounds it is doing. Okay, so that's all. But whereas the material A is doing 7 rounds. Again, people are imagining how can the same material do rounds? No, sir, same material is not used 7 times, not like that. It is not the same material. On an average, the amounts wise when you look at, because the average inventory is 8,000, at any time in the godown you have 8,000 rupees worth of material. On an average, once again, not really that every time there will be 8,000, but in general in the year the total material consumed is of 56,000, means when the godown every time 8,000 is worth of material is there, but you require 56,000 rupees worth of material in a year, means how many times the godown has to be filled and again used, filled and used, filled and used, how many times? Like that, 7 times it is approximately supposed to be done. That is what is number of times turnover. Means how many days on an average the material will be in the store? Approximately 52 days. Whereas the same thing for material B is 146 days. So which is fast moving in these two? Definitely material A is fast moving, whereas material B between them definitely is slow moving material. So like that, the inventory turnover ratios will give us what is the nature of the material. So how many times they are turning over, how many number of days they are being held in the godown can be calculated by using the materials turnover ratios. That is another way of inventory control. So just in time is one type of control. ABC classification is another type. FSNVED is another type. Using the ratios is another type. Physical controls is another type, which has to be done in reality. You and I cannot do that, but theory questions can be asked. What is a two-bin system? Like that establishment of the budgets. This is a very important one. This one you have to definitely write on your notes. So what is this perpetual inventory and continuous stock verification? Name itself will tell. Perpetual inventory records means always there should be an inventory record as and when there is something that is happening. Purchase happened, record it. Issue happened, record it. And along with that, you have to also do continuous stock verification. If any difference is there between the records and real stock, that has to be found out. Very frequently this has to be done. For many companies, actually this is done daily also. For some companies where it is not possible to do daily, that is done on a frequent basis, quarterly, monthly, like that. If we don't follow this, only once in a year only, at the year end when we want to prepare the financial accounts, then we'll wake up and see, we want to see how much is the closing stock. We went to the godown and checked how much is the closing stock. As per record, it is something else. As per the real physical stock, it is something else. A huge difference is there. Why it came also, it will be difficult to find out. So that is danger of sometimes, occasionally doing this inventory checking, stock verification. That is called generally periodic stock verification. So periodic control and perpetual control, both are different. Periodic is okay, but that will not serve the purpose. What is a better one? Scientific one is perpetual inventory control. Always continuously taking stock verification and maintaining the records real time without delay. That is a good way of inventory control. Everybody, can they do that? Can they afford that? Not possible. According to the size, according to the scientific techniques used by the organization, they will be able to use this. But this is the ideal thing. What are we talking? ABC, just in time. Just in time, is it really possible? If you really think about the practicalities of just in time in India, practically it is very difficult. How can you just purchase exactly when you require for production? By the time the materials come from our supplier to us, it may take a lot of time. There may be traffic jam, there may be strike, the truck drivers may go on strike, highways may be closed, anything can happen. Suddenly state borders are closed. So things, a lot of unknown factors will be there. So just in time is not that easy. Theory for us to learn is easy. To implement that, it's very difficult. Toyota, the one master of invention of just in time and usage of that, they themselves could not do, by the way. They could only follow it for a few years. After that, they also said, hands up, Baba, this is becoming more expensive than not following just in time. So these are things which are ideal things. Ideal things are all not always practical things. That is a limitation, always will be there. Ideally, yes. Ideally, these are all fantastic things that we are learning. Perpetual inventory control, yes, so should be done. Continuous stock verification, super. If you do it, excellent. But point is, it is costly. Naturally, it will take their own resources. So according to the organization's requirements, they select any of these inventory control mechanisms. That's it. That is the inventory control techniques that we did not discuss earlier. We have discussed them today. And after this, I think we discussed about already the material issue procedures. Definitely you can go through them. Valuation of material issues, preparation of stores ledger. We discussed all these things. FIFO, LIFO, simple average, weighted average. Most importantly, I hope all of you have gone through the key for the task that has been given recently. That is task number 5. In that key, you should be doing those questions once again. If at all there were any mistakes done by you earlier, and check where you went wrong and rectify those things. Most important thing in these type of problems is clerical errors should not appear. That is dangerous. On the other side, knowing the entries also is very important. Exactly how to treat a particular item is also equally important. Both of them have to be checked with the correct ideal answer that has already been given to you, and rectify your errors if any. If not, that is well and good, fantastic. These are all various items which we already discussed, and I asked you to go through this discussion. This is also important actually. A lot of times in the theory, as theory questions, examinations have asked, a lot of times these questions were asked. What is the distinction between waste and scrap? What is the difference between scrap and defectives? Like this, many of these questions were asked theoretically in the earlier examinations. Like that, a lot of theory questions definitely are there in this chapter. But once again, let us be practical. We're talking about 84 pages of reading material. 84 pages. You don't have to by heart or something like that. You need to have, for every chapter, you need to have a summary of the theory questions, a summary of all the important aspects. So what are the theory questions also on a broader basis? Broader basis, the theory questions can be related to the documents. What are the documents? You should be able to write at least 1 or 2 lines about them. All these documents definitely are important. What is bin card? What is storage ledger? Definitely we should know. What are the levels? Definitely these are all like useful for formula also. These formula are useful for our problems also that we did. And just in time is an important theory question by itself. ABC analysis is an important theory question by itself. Each of them is an important theory question. Classification of the materials, like that. And methods and all, you can use them in the problems. And very important is this: waste, scrap and spoilage. What is that and how they are treated? 4 marks, 5 marks questions very easily can be asked. All that you need to write is 2 to 3 lines maximum, not more than that. What is waste, what is scrap and what is spoilage? Simple things you have to write according to the same words which are used here. So that is about various types of material losses. Wastage means what? Basic raw material lost in the processing having no recoverable value, that is waste, gone, no recoverable value at all. Scrap means usually the incidental material residue coming out of certain manufacturing operations has some recoverable value but low recoverable value. Scrap, for example, for a sugar factory, molasses is the scrap, we can say. All the sugar cane, not just the molasses, but molasses actually can be called as a byproduct. But scrap is almost like the sugar which has been squeezed and the remaining thing. That will be called as scrap, which will be having a recoverable value but very less recoverable value. Spoilage means which are goods which are damaged beyond the rectification, which can be sold without further processing. Even if you rectify them also, they cannot be rectified. But defectives are other side. They can be rectified. So what is the difference between spoilage and defectives? Spoilage is beyond rectification. You cannot rectify them. Defectives means little bit rectification can be done, little bit of modification can be done. Like you see this factory seconds sale and all. Small defective items will be stitched with some embroidery and they are sold at lower prices. Those are all actually rejected in the quality control, and those are still possible to be rectified and sold, but not at a same price, not exactly at same price, sometimes maybe at a lower price. But if that is matching with the final quality requirements, that can be sold as good units also. These are all various material losses. Clear? With that, we can conclude this chapter of materials with all the different types of questions that have been discussed and done. There are some other questions, I would say generic questions, very much the ones which cannot be actually called with any, which cannot be attached to any model. There is no model for them. So such questions require common sense and general understanding of what is materials. So such questions also I will send you as a task, and once you complete them, with that we can conclude this chapter of materials, and then we can move on to next chapter in the next session. Till that time, take care. Thank you very much. Bye bye.